Good afternoon. Welcome to Broadband Breakfast Live Online for Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. My name is Drew Clark, and I am very happy to welcome all of you to a special edition of Broadband Breakfast Live Online. We really appreciate those of you who were with us last week, where we took a brief hiatus. I had a little video intro, and we also, chatted with people who we knew, because we are trying to be every Wednesday. We don't do every Wednesday like Inauguration Day. Hey, we took a break that day. But almost every Wednesday, we're here at 12 noon Eastern Time talking about some aspect of broadband policy, internet technology, with a strong focus on better broadband, better lives. That's our motto here at Broadband Breakfast. We want to make sure people get that capacity and they are able to utilize it. And there's probably no topic more important, more central to better broadband, better lives right now than the whole issue of broadband infrastructure funding. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about getting your share of the $75 billion in broadband grants with Broadband.Money.com. Actually, Broadband.Money. Excuse me, Broadband.Money. And with that,
Broadband.Money.com works too, Drew.
Does it? All right. Well, you got all the bases covered. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest for today. It is Jase Wilson of Broadband.Money and Ready.net. He's going to tell us a little bit about those. But first, Jase, why don't I give you a chance to just say hello and introduce what your passion is for this subject of better broadband, better lives.
Yeah, Drew, thank you for having me on, and thank you everybody that's attending. I know you all are very busy. And to those of you that are broadband professionals that are out connecting folks, thank you again for getting folks on to better internet access. And that's my passion, is help you connect more people to better services. And I get the fortune to work with the talented Ready.net team as a group of amazing engineers that build software that help local service providers, connect more people to better broadband services and deliver a better subscriber experience throughout the subscriber life cycle. And so it's a real honor to get to hang out with everybody here today, and I look forward to answering some questions about Broadband.Money and about the grants program. And if time permits, I can tell some dad jokes if we have some space to fill. So.
Well, very cool. And Jase, you're coming to us from the San Francisco Bay Area, right?
That's correct.
So tell me a little bit about Broadband.Money. What is Broadband.Money, and where did you get the idea for it, Jase?
Yeah, so Broadband.Money is the fastest way for broadband professionals to discover and win broadband grants in their territory. And it's an application portal. It's a resource portal. There's a community of folks that are willing to help out, from other applicants to consultants that help build really great, strong grant proposals, to even some of the folks that are involved with the state offices. And it's also, access to a lot of data on unserved, underserved, sociodemographics, the picture of like competition in your territory and everything else. And it's all there for you. And, it's something that we encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to pre-apply, to pre-enroll. It's open right now. The last I checked this morning, it was over 84 qualified applicants, and we're thinking about capping it at 120 just to make sure that everybody that goes through the program gets a great experience. And it's a little bit of time until the IIJA $65 billion big slug of money is coming through it, but there's already several programs that are active on it for Treasury and for the wonderful NTIA program. So
that's great. That's great context. And just stepping back for all of our readers, watchers, viewers, we try to really break things down and explain things. Don't take information for granted. And so, as you've just pointed out, there's a lot of attention and focused on the IIJA, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. right? That is the big bipartisan infrastructure package that's kind of sitting in the House right now. It's passed the Senate with a very bipartisan vote. I think it was
Right.
67 or 69 to 30, 69 to 30, if I'm recalling correctly. And that is, again, like there's controversy in Washington, but there's not controversy about the IIJA, the $65 billion amount for broadband, 42 billion of which is going to be set aside for broadband infrastructure, with the remainder for some various programs. But if you just point out, there's other programs too, whether through the appropriations bill that was passed at the very start of this year, or through the ARP, the American Recovery legislation, or even going back to last year to the CARES Act, right? Lots of internet service providers have gotten broadband funds through that measure. And so this has kind of become like a regular part of life, if you will, in the pandemic, is funding through the government for broadband. And so I take it you're basically seeing, hey, there's a need and there's an opportunity. Would you mind just backing us up a little bit and telling us a little bit more about Ready.net for those who aren't familiar with Ready.net, and what that does, and again, how that kind of fed into what you're offering now and what we're talking about now in Broadband.Money.
Yeah, Drew, spot on. Ready.net we build a software platform. It's a talented team of software engineers, and our mission is to help broadband professionals connect more people to better service. And the goal is to help broadband professionals grow their business. And we got to 10 customers earlier this year, and we looked up and said, it's time for us to really go to market. We're a startup, and we built a really wonderful cloud-based API first platform that allows all kinds of wonderful things. It's got a bunch of modules. It integrates to a bunch of important systems and the internet provider stack. And they said, well, you could do the traditional SaaS sales and marketing route and spend like $1 million on Google Ads and go and do like a huge dog and pony show about the company and the software, which that's one path, and certainly we can still do that. But we said, let's actually ask our customers, like what are some of the biggest pain points that they've encountered. And when we sat down with them, what we saw was like a common denominator where these are folks that are out like rolling up their sleeves and getting people connected to the internet, right? And they're really good at their jobs, right? And we have some really amazing, fast growing internet providers that are using our platform for a variety of purposes. And but they all said funding remains a challenge, right? And so we dug into it, we looked at it and said, well, okay, tell us more about that. And said, it turns out that like, every one of them had some equivalent of like crawling over, glass, broken glass, and like walking over a hot coal or something like that to get grant money, right? And several of our customers, won big in the CAF2 and even in the RDoF programs. And, it was something that they had to dedicate, a huge chunk of their lives in order to pull it off. And, in some cases, like they weren't able to keep up with like the demands of the customers, right? Their subscribers. And, so we looked into it and we said like, it really shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't take up that much of your time, right? So we looked at it and we dug in and it turned out like, a huge chunk of the problems that are encountered when applying for grants in general are software solvable problems, right? And so we said, well, that's our core competency at Ready. And then by way of background, like, Ready's founders have a background in fintech and financing infrastructure. And so, the other thing that folks can do Broadband.Money is, once you have an application and you're wanting to pursue grant funding, you can team up with potential sources of match capital.
Yeah,
right? Most of these grant programs.
We definitely want to get into that. That's going to be something we really want to focus on. But you're jumping right in. Let me just pause and stop you for a second, because we really kind of like acronym alert here. Anytime someone mentions
about that. It's like our guy Elon says, acronyms seriously suck.
Yeah, well, you've thrown out a couple SaaS, okay, and many people will know that, but that's software as a service, right?
Yeah, that one is really super over.
You may have to be under a rock to not know what that is, but still, we like to not take nothing for granted. And you're basically saying that SaaS companies like Ready.net and I guess sort of Broadband.Money are providing this incredible value using software. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line, right? And it's unpacking problems that are out there, like getting grant applications out. And then you threw out two other grant applications called CAF2, which is the Connect America Fund,
Yeah.
round 2. That was in some ways the gateway to getting smaller ISPs into the broadband funding game for rural terrain. And then RDOF, which stands for Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, the first round of that was kicked off last October. And again, there's been some, controversy around it. But again, the key thing for our purposes is that this is an opportunity, is it not,
Right.
for ISPs? Is that correct, Jase? Is that the bottom line?
Absolutely correct, Drew. In prior programs, before CAF2, right, even CAF1 and several of the prior generations of programs for grants, the local providers sat around and watched, wave after wave of funding going to the incumbents, right? And the incumbents, we joke at Ready, when they get the grant money, they don't use it to actually connect more people to better service. They deploy it into the 3Bs, right, of use of proceeds as buybacks, right, to reconcentrate stock and bonuses for the key execs that made the grant money happen, and then BS. And yet that's an acronym that you can decode for readers if you want to, Drew.
There we go. We don't need to articulate that one out, but that's
Yeah.
great. I like those three.
But you're right, Drew. In this wave, and to your point earlier, Drew, about it's become a sort of a sort of a habit, a muscle memory at this point in the pandemic of seeing these programs roll out. What we think, though, right, is that this could potentially, the IIJA, if it's done correctly, could be the last bucket of broadband money, right, from the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, didn't mean to step on you. Go ahead. Well, and we certainly heard the phrase, I really don't like it. Oh, this is a once in a generation opportunity. I mean, look, you never know what's going to happen in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, but it is certainly a big opportunity. And so now let me just gear to a really important question, Jase. Is Broadband.Money, is it just for ISPs, right? Or not? Tell me more the scope of who can make use of Broadband.Money.
Not at all, Drew. The core software that we built, it powers internet provider businesses, right? It does like from finding and signing prospects in a territory, geospatial analysis tools to, onboarding and sign up and checkout tools to billing to reporting that, when we sat down to actually scope out what would it take to build something that could be useful to them to make sure that they're able to get their share of these grant programs. And we looked at all the different grant programs. In the majority of cases, there were several other participants that are involved, right? And one way to think about it, Drew, is that you as the applicant, you need to team up with others, right? And in some of these programs, you won't even be the lead applicant, right? You'll actually team up with like a community anchor institution, right? And they'll be the lead applicant, but you'll be the provider. So in this way, it turned out to be more of a multi-sided marketplace. And that's what we built on top of the Ready Boss platform, which, by the way, stands for back office secret sauce, since we're unrolling acronyms here. So
back office secret sauce, but there's another acronym for OSS, is there not, Jase?
Yeah, and BSS, right? And that name is a playful reimagining of, like, if you were to think from first principles about what we know about last kilometer connectivity and getting folks connected to the internet, like, and you were to build it from scratch, would you build two separate categories of business supporting system and operating supporting system, or would you actually recast the incumbent structure into like a single platform and title? And that's plus it's a cool name. We thought it was cool. Maybe you don't think it's so cool, but
no, I like it too. Awesome.
Yeah, so there is a diverse mix of folks. So of the 84 pre-enrollments we've had so far, we've had lots of investors that have come forward. And these are folks that are interested in, opportunities to explore grant-backed broadband deals, right, where they invest alongside states in, potential returns that it can be enhanced and in some cases protected by, the grants, depending on what the state does with the money. And, there've also been a broad range of consultants that showed up that, they help providers and they help, network owners and communities and all different kinds of folks, like rural electric cooperatives, municipal networks, and even mom and pop local ISPs, do their thing, like design their network, right? Engage the constituencies and all this stuff. So we're actually teaming up with several of them. And so there's this component of like, the marketplace is like, part of it's like a matchmaking, right? It's like a date platform for folks that want to potentially explore the services of those consultants. And then we have also a good mix of government folks from all levels, right? From the national offices into the state offices, and in some cases, some regional broadband offices that are already getting rolled out.
Yeah, no, this piece is really, really critical, and I'm glad we're getting to it, which is the matchmaking component, right? And while everyone's waiting for IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, right? It's in the House, it's passed the Senate, as I already mentioned. Everyone's waiting for that. It's the biggest chunk of money. But there's already been, ample programs, or at least some programs out there, including, the broadband infrastructure program that basically forced ISPs together with a municipality or a state entity. So do you have any kind of experience from that, Jase? I mean, I know we've just been talking about this, but let's get a little more specific on the matchmaking. How does it work? How does Broadband.Money help?
Absolutely, Drew. And you say it like it's a bad thing. We actually think it's a great thing. We think it's like this, a really interesting and novel approach to public-private partnerships. And we applaud NCIA for, having that, recognition and leadership that they have of, there are good things about how government can deploy resources, and there are good things about how the private sector can step up and do their thing, right? And when you put them together, if you don't put them to compete against each other, you put them together in good ways, like cinnamon and sunshine. It's like a really great combo, And on Broadband.Money, there's an entire community that, folks that go through the enrollment process, get into a community. They're able to meet with folks from the consulting community. They're able to ask questions of folks from the different state offices. They're able to get advice from each other. And in the case of grant writers, especially, like there'll be several Broadband.Money partners, right? That are there. They're, you can self-apply and you can spit out the forms at the end of it, right? Whether it's SF424, the bundle of forms that go into the NTIA's process, or you can team up with a consultant and actually work in a collaborative space, and not in the sense of grants.gov collaborative space. That's like, I encourage folks, if you have some time and you're interested in this sort of thing, like go and read the comments on the videos on the grants.gov posted to YouTube of people trying to actually do the collaborate. We actually have collaboration. So that's an entertaining, like grab your popcorn kind of fun read.
Well, let's talk specifically about applicants, right? And let's focus first on ISP type applicants. What advice do you have for local ISPs, like with the emphasis on local, right? I mean, the people who are on the ground, whether they're wireless internet service providers or fiber-based providers, or quite frankly, and we'll talk a little bit about this. You and I were both at Wispapalooza last week, and
that was great.
That was the message of the show for me, was that they may have to drop the W from Wireless Internet Service Provider Association, because everyone I spoke to was thinking of fiber, right? They're thinking of hybrid networks. They're thinking of how to use fiber and wireless to get the best bang for their buck.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's so for these local ISPs, what advice do you have for them as they're thinking about, hey, how do I get my application together? What can Broadband.Money do for me?
Yeah, advice. Number one advice to them is to stay hydrated. I'm seriously parched, and I'm sorry if I'm taking too many drinks here, but when I start talking, that happens. But seriously, Drew, we think the gist is like, we can supply you with these tools that help you get your share, right? But we hope we can also inspire confidence in you to like do it, right? And to really do it, right? To lace up your Nikes and do it, to go, right? Number one would be just go, right? Like we noticed among our initial conversations and beta tests that there's a sense of, in interviews with ISPs, that there's a sense of, it's almost like an imposter syndrome of, we can't do it or something like that, or, that's not for us. And that makes sense after like living in the shadow of wave after wave of billions of dollars every couple of years going into the incumbents, and the incumbents using the money to like, stifle local competition. And so it's understandable. Like it's not for me, but we say it actually is, you should at least at minimum, like go and read the resources in the Broadband.Money resource portal. There's a lot of information about how these programs are very specifically for you, the local provider, right? So if you're local, or if you're those that are helping local, like the consultants that help local folks, like, go first and foremost. Then, two, we also say go big, right? Like this is the opportunity to add a zero to like whatever metric you were thinking about, right? Whatever was your driving metric. Like if you were thinking, well, by 2025, it would be nice if I had 1,000 subscribers, like, why not 10,000, right? Or if there's, you're thinking like, I need $5 million for 10 towers or 100 miles of fiber or whatever, why not 50 million for, 100 towers or, 1,000 miles of fiber, or both, right? In your example of the WISPs that are fiberizing with the money, that is a valid use of proceeds for a lot of those programs, right? So we say go big, and then 3, we say go fast, because it's like this weird, like a do or die moment in the industry, right? It's like an evolutionary inflection point, and we think that like growth-minded, very flexible local networks that commit to really good subscriber service that go get the money are going to thrive, and stagnant networks and folks that don't go and get the money are not necessarily going to fare so well.
So when someone goes to Broadband.Money and starts the application process, what programs can they apply for right now, right? And how will that change as things evolve, as legislation changes, as rules?
We're all waiting on IIJA, right? We've already unrolled the acronyms, but
we have.
That's $65 billion. That's coming soon, right? But meanwhile, there's $11 billion worth of programs active and open, right? They're the wonderful programs from NTIA, right, itself. In IIJA, the NTIA is going to hand the money to the states, right? But NTIA has its own programs that you mentioned, Drew, like, the broadband infrastructure program. There's, close to $300 million. They just closed the application last month on the $900 million tribal fund. And then there's the wonderful Connecting Minority Communities. It's, $200 million. And then there's the Treasury Capital Fund, $10 billion.
That one closes December 1st, so it's still open. That
one's still open now. That's right.
So you've kind of started to allude to this, Jase, but I want to really drill into this because most of the money is anticipated that it'll be going to or through NTIA, which of course is the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, right? Now, there is another group out there, our readers will know it, the Federal Communications Commission. They are the ones who do Universal Service Fund funding, and the CAF2 and the RDOF that we've spoken about it went through the FCC. When we're now talking about NTIA as the intended, entity, there is another very, very significant player, and that is state governments.
Oh, yeah.
So talk a little bit about how the state role will manifest itself. First off, what advice do you have for state broadband organizations that have to oversee this? And then how can they use Broadband.Money?
Yeah, you're right, Drew. The states, they're going to play a massive outsized role. And, some of them, sadly, probably won't do much with it. They might just get the minimum 100 million. Others will not only get the bucket of money, the most that they can possibly get through their proposals, they'll turn around and leverage the money, right? And they'll multiply the economic benefit, right? And they'll actually bring real and meaningful change to, huge swaths of their state and their constituents. And I got to know you a bit, Drew, and I was a fan of your career and trajectory. And I love the fact that you're actually like you were an early state guy, right? Like you were like
we call it
1.0, right?
State Broadband Initiative 1.0 in Illinois, Partnership for Illinois. We've now been replaced, superseded, improved upon by Matt Schmidt, who's doing an awesome job in this state broadband role. But go ahead, Jase, tell a little bit more about these roles.
Yeah, each state's going to have their quarterback, and then they're going to decide like which direction they're going to go with it. There are some amazing states out there doing programs already. The folks in Maine are doing really wonderful things. The folks in Missouri are doing really wonderful things. But, in this case, like it seems kind of daunting to us, right? We're just distant observers of it, but, in our conversations with state folks, like it's a big challenge, right? It's like you're the dog that caught the ambulance. You are under-resourced historically, right? you're about to get like this huge chunk of money, and you're expected to do like the most amount of good with it, right? And the most economic impact with it, right? And so, I don't know if I have any advice other than like what you told me, Drew, which is like what you were trying to accomplish back in Illinois was like, it was a community, right? You were trying to get people together on calls, right? So that we're gonna be doing that at Broadband.Money is like getting folks together, convening folks, like having, regular sessions, office hours, stuff like that. But it's like, you're not alone, right?
Yep.
And then two is like software can help, right? I'm biased, that, Ready is awesome and Ready Boss is amazing. It's not really built for states. There are wonderful software partners like Vitro that have like a broadband intelligence platform that I think it looks very promising. We just saw it yesterday for states, and there are other such platforms that are out there. And we just encourage you like to consider startups, right? In this quest, like startups have only one advantage, and that's they can move really, really fast, and they're programmed to like make you very, very happy, right? Or they die, right?
Well,
So that can be a really powerful ally, and you can use software. It's not going to solve all of your problems, but you can use software to save a lot of time, force multiply your efforts. And in our case, like what we think the benefits will be to states from Broadband.Money is, not just the community and the conversations and engaging with applicants, and that leads to getting more applications, right? So diversity of competition, applying to your state, even folks that are from other parts of the country, right? And then two is like a higher bar, a higher quality of standard, not just on the initial applications, right? Which we think that, the applications that get submitted, by way of Broadband.Money, they're going to cross the T's and dot the I's, and that's great. They're going to allow, the applicants to focus on the narrative and to tell you the story of like why, they're trying to do what they're trying to do. And through the reporting, remember this entire thing is built on top of a reporting system. And, unlike the prior programs, like this bucket of money is going to come with, some pretty stiff reporting requirements that get automated through the software that underpins Broadband.Money.
Turning the question back just to myself and my experience, one of the things I took from my experience at Partnership for Connected Illinois was the integral role of mapping and planning at the outset, right? Because that was part of our charge, is collecting the broadband maps and data and truth checking it, fact checking it, combined with the role we played as, an intermediary, a coordinator on the infrastructure funds that came down the pike, right? And there was compliance rules. There always is associated with the government. There's going to be rules, forms, things that need to get taken care of, and perhaps we can minimize those, or certainly we can minimize some of those through software. And I want to learn more about that here just now. But then the third thing was the role of digital inclusion and digital equity, right? And that was kind of something I didn't necessarily go in appreciating, but we had to not just sell the infrastructure, so to speak, in loose terms, but we had to, highlight why it was a benefit for people in their lives. And we helped develop a early broadband lifeline pilot with 7 different rural broadband providers in Western and Southern Illinois. So it's kind of the combination of those things. And we're seeing a lot of that right now with the gathering efforts. And I think there's a lot more we can talk about here about particularly the matchmaking role. And by the way, I didn't mean to say that in a derogatory way earlier on about NTA designing this program to include both broadband providers and governments. I'm a huge advocate for anyone.
I was giving you a hard time.
Yeah, well, helping anyone, whether it's a city or a private entity or a co-op or even an incumbent, right? As long as there are open opportunities for everyone. We are getting a bunch of questions here. I want to get into more about the matchmaking too, but can we take a break here? We're halfway in and address some of these questions here, Jase. Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely, Drew.
All right, so let me just start with one from Scott Wade, who says he's a small private wireless internet service provider. How can he get dollars allocated to me to help build out a fiber to underserved communities? He's concerned about the big guys, but in our state, there's an opportunity to tap into 80%. So I don't know if you can read.
That's awesome,
read it.
Scott. Scott,
Tell us your reaction.
where are you based, Scott? I guess I mean I don't have the means of.
No, he's in Montana. He's just replied. Scott's in Montana.
Oh yeah, fantastic. So amazing state, by the way. But you're right to think like, okay, well, that's a very smart move on your part, Scott, to think not just in terms of like your own growth plan, but of defense, right? Several of the applicants that have showed up to Broadband.Money, show up in the screening interview. It's what's the goal here? It's well, we have a plan, but more importantly is like we're gonna make sure that an incumbent doesn't get money to overbuild us, right? That said, like we do strongly encourage you to go to Broadband.Money and throw in a pre-enrollment, get into the queue. You'll end up with resources about the programs, including digests and there's office hours and things like that, and then some really interesting tools that you can use to very quickly uncover in your footprint existing and proposed where you serve now versus where you desire to serve over the course of the next few years. Tools to find the underserved and unserved folks, and in rural places, Scott, and anybody that's outside of major metros where there's a low density of active measurement data, we do also encourage you to at least make the time to go and find your own proactive measurements. Reason being, like a lot of the data sets are actually feeding into a lot of these maps that are saying like, here's where to find the 25/3 unserves, the 100/20 underserves, are coming from advertising sponsored, free tools or freemium tools, right? And that can be a challenge, right? In rural areas where incumbents that also advertise with this source of data are, in a position where they understandably have, in some cases higher, quality results than what's shown. So if you go in and do your own homework on your territory, you might find that there's actually a greater need than what, some of the national maps and some of the public data sets that are available are telling you.
Yeah, I mean, and in fact, the reason we only did an RDOF 1 and not an RDOF 2 is because some on the Federal Communications Commission said, hey, we can't give the rest of this money out until we have better maps. So mapping is going to be really a key component of this. Let me just get to the additional question Scott asks here, Jase, which is
Sure.
Investment firms. Can you provide some examples of investment firms that help get grant dollars? Are these loan shark type investors? Any that will help?
None in the Broadband.Money capital network are loan shark type investors, but we hear you and appreciate the laugh. And you're right to want to know that. There's some really shady crap that goes into some of those deals. We have a diverse source of folks that take equity positions, from folks that want to participate small check into a party round to folks that want to take a controlling interest in your business and jump on your board, right, to help you go big, go fast. We have a diverse source of debt folks, right, that run the spectrum on credit and different approaches to it. We even have some of the relative newcomers of forward receivable purchasers that come in and they're not going to dilute your business and they're not going to put your business in debt. They're going to lock up a portion of your future cash flows. And there are some interesting proposals that are underway with those folks, all three buckets, depending on your preference, what you're looking for, Scott, in your business. And if you're looking, you're almost certainly going to need to take on a strong equity partner, right? But the means do exist nowadays that it's possible to get the equity component of what you're looking for with a party round being like a group of small checks, into a vehicle, say a syndicate. So that's something that we can absolutely help with. And that's one of our core competencies. And there's a great network of folks. So no loan sharks allowed.
How is it going to work? I mean, I know obviously, Jase, it's just starting off, but you have mentioned 80 some applicants pre-applied here. So how does the matchmaking? Let's go a little more in detail into the matchmaking effort of Broadband.Money, particularly with investors here. Let's stick on this for a moment.
Sure. Well, on the match, it's part of the extended enrollment process is to uncover what you as the founder, you as the owner, you as the operator, whoever you are as an applicant, what are your goals, right? That's the number one thing, is like, what do you want, right? If you're like, you've been at it for 15 years, you're gonna hang up, the bucket truck, like, and you want to go off into the sunset after this program, like, there are lots of equity partners that are looking for opportunities to get a controlling interest in your business, right? Or if you're just looking, you're just starting up and you're saying like, I'm going to 10x my footprint and I'm going to leverage all the grant money that I get, but I'm going to need a slug of money up front, right? Then there are folks, that are more appropriate for you. So understanding like, what is it that you desire, right, is first and foremost, and then getting into the fundamentals of your business, right? It makes it really easy to present the salient points about your business that investors need to understand in order to, contemplate offers, potential investment opportunities into your company. So.
Yeah, well, and we've got a 3-person dialogue going on in the chat window. We certainly encourage others to weigh in as well. The second of the, well, maybe the third, whatever. I'll get to all 3 of you. John Paul does say, I agree with Jase. There are infrastructure investment firms that are standing by to help leverage this grant money. Small rural ISPs are perfectly posed to take advantage of the new funding, upgrade their networks to fiber, and be future ready. 5 megabits per second is no longer workable for anyone. Now, there's some disagreement there, but what do you say to people who espouse that view, Jase? And if you wouldn't mind talking about your perceptions of WISPapalooza and what you see the wireless internet service providers potentially benefiting from this opportunity.
Well, Drew, you'll quickly come to find out I'm not the sharpest sandwich in the rocket ship, so you gotta kind of spoon feed me a little bit. Can we do one question at a time? Because
yeah. What do you think about Jase? What do you think about John Paul's comment about small rural WISPs are perfectly poised to use this funding to fiberize, upgrade their networks?
100%.
Yeah.
The ones that want to grow their footprint, the ones that want to upgrade their infrastructure, the ones, and you mentioned WISPs. We absolutely love WISPs. We got like several WISP customers, including like visionary Nathan Stook at Whisper, like who was one of the inspirations of like why we launched Broadband.Money is, he and his brother-in-law spent like so many sleepless nights trying to get their share of CAF2. They ended up getting it, right? That's awesome. But it was like something in the order of 180 conversations with different prospective lenders, not to get the loan, right? It was to get a letter of credit, right? So it was like that the challenges that are faced by local folks, like local folks, they don't necessarily have like a team of grant professionals, a team of folks that are sitting around on standby to develop, huge applications, everything. But the ones that really, really want it, like John mentions, they can get it. This is for them. This money is for you, right? And we really applaud the WISPs that are saying, no, we're not going to look at it as, that's a higher standard than what WISPs can provide. Because to be honest, that's total crap anyway, right? There's nothing in any of those programs that say like it's specific to this medium in the physical layer. They all focus on results, right? And yes, they've added an increased upload speed that's more challenging for legacy equipment, and they've added latency, which can be a challenge for some wireless configurations. But in both cases, modern technology that you can use the money to buy, right? If you watch like the Toronto wireless demo with Nathan from a few weeks ago, that's a 400 over 400, right? I worry about competitors that try to go toe to toe with those guys in markets where they say we're going to turn on that market, right? Because 400 over 400, sub 10 millisecond latency, and that's in the miles range, right? Like you can be wireless and absolutely get these programs. So I fully agree with John. And then to your second, I think, question, Drew, like we heard in WISPapalooza, like a little bit of a sentiment from folks that spend a lot of time in DC is like, oh, those buckets of money are not for us. False. All of those buckets of money are open to you, including like there's $1 billion carve out in IIJA that's for backbone and middle mile, right? Infrastructure. And if you're a WISP and you have a track record of successfully connecting people, and you can point to customer reviews and show that you do an awesome job with serving subscribers, you are absolutely in a position to say, well, I'm actually going to go and apply for $5 million because I finally want to build my own fiber loop over on that side of town, right? That's completely yours, right? It's not an us versus them kind of thing in our view.
Right. No, absolutely. And so we'll get to the other commentator in the chat window in just one moment. But Scott Wade he's just said, so the two of you are saying that if we sign up with Broadband.Money, you have the means to help small WISPs that want to invest and expand over the next 10 years. The platform resource will help us get the discussions, applications, funding for me. How do you answer that question, Jase?
I say you should have got Scott to do this webinar and saved everybody on the call 50 some odd minutes, because that sums it up beautifully.
Yeah. Well, Scott, we look forward to interacting as you go through this process, as you put the information through and see what it can provide you. Now, we do have another perspective here. Brett Glass, we've heard from Brett before. Brett's kind of taking the view, if I may summarize a bit, that, hey, I'm a small mom and pop ISP. I want to stay a small mom and pop ISP. He's a very strong advocate for wireless over fiber, if you will, and that it kind of meets and exceeds needs. Brett, if I've mischaracterized your view, feel free to chime back, as I'm sure you will in the comment window. But what do you say to people like Brett who kind of are on that edge and don't really want to expand in the way that you've been framing it in this call thus far, Jase?
Well, growth is one aspect of why folks are pre-enrolling. Upgrades are another. I agree entirely with Brett that the approach of wireless, especially if you have good fiber access to fiber in places, is a really wonderful way to connect a lot of people to good service, right? I also look at the exponentiating demand for bandwidth and see that the arguments about a certain number of megabits per second today are very quickly going to become moot. And you can look into more bandwidth intensive applications. You can even study, like we do, we scrape the service reviews of every ISP in the United States. We look at the sentiment analysis. We look at the performance as measured by customers. In some cases, we have our own proactive strength test. Shout out to the wonderful Ready team, or you can go visit it at wifi.wtf, which it's a funny name, but it's a very serious tool. We've been collecting data. We see, that the plans that offer, in the 5 category, especially up, it just takes Junior being home from school for an hour and getting on Fortnite and needing to do a Zoom call to obviate the claim, of 5 is sufficient. So I don't know if that's part of the point. I actually can't see the comments. I'm just kind of going off of what you said, Drew, as you related, but yeah, that's our perspective, is that, somebody like Brett's absolutely right that, wireless over fiber is a really strong pattern. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go and grow your footprint, but you can still think about upgrading your infrastructure and keeping up with the insatiable demand for bandwidth that's coming down the pipe. So
Brett has one more point that let's touch on before we move to another topic of consultants and back to investment. But his point is that he's viewing these grants as a threat, not a benefit. And so what is your reaction to that?
Well, as a local provider, yeah, I could definitely empathize, Brett, with that position. And I think that several of the folks that have pre-enrolled so far have had that same concern, right? But their view is like, it's a bit of game theory, right? The money is coming to your footprint, whether you want it to or not, right? So the move, like the chess move here, is just to go ahead and apply, right? And then apply for your share, so that you're actually in a spot that you can, at least in some of the programs, sort of defensively take your share, even if you say, like, we're just going to sit on it or put it as a rainy day fund, which most of these new programs, you can't actually do that. You have to have a plan for what you're going to do. But that could be like, I'm gonna build my own fiber loops. I'm gonna upgrade the equipment. I'm gonna get going on like next gen wireless stuff, whatever. Right? Those are all valid use of proceeds in several of those programs. So, but we are on Brett's side in every sense. Like, we're in the corner of local providers. Like, local providers, even if they don't have these, grand ambitions to 10x or 100x their subscriber base, right? Which some WISPs that we talked to last week, Drew, they 10x or 100x, their total base in the CARES Act money, right? Like, it's absolutely insane how quickly they can grow. There's still the case of defending your territory, and then there's still the case, and I think there'll always be the case of upgrading equipment.
Yeah, I want to touch upon the role of consultants, right? And what role consultants play in the grant ecosystem. Does Broadband.Money compete with consultants, or is it open to consultants? How do you view their role in this process?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It does not compete with consultants. As everybody here knows, there's only so much that software can do, right? So if you look at the software, like what can software help you do? It can strengthen the applications, right? Right. It can force multiply like the time inputs. Like, you answer this one question that the software then turns into the inputs for these 5 different forms. If you're applying to 5 different programs, or in some cases, like the lovely SF424 family, you're answering the same thing like 11 times, right? You can do that once, right? And then software can help you to pipe out the answers and that's true of also the states having their different ways of receiving information, even though they're going to be asking, fundamentally the same kinds of questions, right? So, and then software can get you data at your fingertips, right? You can get access to like oceans of information and use that to start to make good choices about where you want to apply, right? But what software cannot craft your narrative. Software can't tell your story. Software can't design your network for you. Although I think some of the folks in the auto design community might disagree with that statement, but consultants still play like a crucial role across the broad spectrum, engaging constituents, like making sure that the application is its highest and best outcome, right? So it's absolutely not competitive with consultants. In fact, we're in the process of working to team up with a lot of grant writing consultants, and it's going to be something like the equivalent of like a TurboTax. Like, yeah, you can self-apply, you can mail it in or fax it in, or you can e-file it on your own, that's fine, or you can have one of our folks take a look at it. It's gonna be that kind of model. So it's gonna team you up with strong vetted consultants that can help you with various parts of your plan.
So those who are consultants, who are participating in this, who are watching this, what should they do? Should they go through the same process and just fill out the intake form?
It starts in the same spot, and we look at the application, the pre-enrollment application, and we say, that's somebody, and we look at the background. We do diligence on each of the applicants, and we look at the background of the firm, and then we say there's some really great core strengths there. And so we're actively building out a marketplace of consultants that are in a spot that they can actually help take on this massive wave of opportunity, right? And they're going to play a vital role in the upfront part. They're going to play a vital role in the ongoing, making sure that the money is getting deployed correctly and stuff like that. So we strongly encourage folks that have a business that is in grant writing, in funding, in network design, right? We have even folks that are from hardware that have showed up that have applied, and so we have conversations going with vendors that they create things that their customers use, and it turns out to be one of the major use cases of the platform is driven by the folks that have better next generation stuff that want to guide that process for their customers. So
yeah, well, we've got a great question from John Paul to the brass tacks here. Jase, talk a little bit about how Broadband.Money will work, what fees will be involved for providers.
How will it work? There's a pre-enrollment, we screen. There's a full enrollment. We did beta testing with some of our existing customers on a few of the existing programs through NTIA. For IIJA, the big wave, the $65 billion wave, where the vast majority of applicants should be focusing their attention. There'll be an enrollment process that there'll be kickoff, and you'll get access to the community to the resources and the guides, the office hours, there's a series of Ask Me Anythings, coming up with various state and folks from grant writing and technology, and even successful past winners of grant programs. Those things are available to you. And then the process is actually, you start by answering the questions that are universal to all the applications, whether you're going to do this program or that program. There's a very strict common trunk of, core answers that you submit, and you submit it through the software. And then you're given access to a geospatial platform, very straightforward. Go and find in your footprint, where do you think you should apply, right? And it gives you access to like previous funding program data, gives you access to multiple data sets of unserved, underserved, strength test, speed test, kinds of things. You can even plug in your own proactive measurement, from your monitoring system if you have network in a territory and you want to actually bring your own source of truth. And then you can see socio-demographic stuff like that, and then form, a really good application for folks that apply and don't win, and they don't use any of the consulting services or the add-ons. Then, it's definitely going to happen. There's not a charge, right? If you win, there's going to be a nominal fee on a per subscriber per month basis ongoing for folks that do win, because the arrangement is that, it's not just the application system, it's also the source of truth for the reporting. It's going to automate the reporting for you to make sure that you're piping out all the different forms to all the different agencies on time, and you have the built-in proactive measurement tools that you need in order to submit to the. We love this from the NTIA. I mean, these are like reporting wizards, right? There's some visionary, broadband policy folks over there, like Scott Woods and team. Like, you're going to have to show that you actually achieved like the thing that you said you were going to achieve in your application, right? So, and it's not just download, upload, it's latency too, right? In that case. So.
Yeah, and Jase, you have addressed the follow-up that John Paul asked, which is, I'm assuming there are fees. Will they be tied to grant amounts or flat fees? And you've answered it as I hear it, per subscriber per month. That's kind of where this all goes. Is that fair, Jase?
Yeah, and that's for the base reporting tools and infrastructure. And then, we throw in things like there's a feature complete billing system, for folks that want to, bill their subscribers in a seamless way. But there's also, again, we're a software company and this platform is pretty broad. It's also, you'll be able to see other features that you might like, right? There are other things that are built into the ReadyBoss platform, from, finding and signing prospects, pre-construction signups, and even door-to-door engagement tools like that you might like. And that's our bet, is that, investing in the infrastructure to help broadband professionals win their share of these grant programs that, some of them might end up, enjoying some of the tools that they see. So, but there's nothing that's obligatory besides the ongoing 10-year reporting.
Thanks. We got about 5 minutes left, Jason, and I want to come back to the investment side of things, the matchmaking side of things, and we've had a great turnout on this live online event from WISPs, wireless internet service providers, but we certainly don't want people to get the idea this is just for WISPs or WISP considering fiber. But in fact, Jase, I think when we had you on the program at Digital Infrastructure Investment at Broadband Communities, that of course is a big fiber show, and our conference, Digital Infrastructure Investment, was precisely teed up to the issue or the topic matter of financial service entities and operators and working together, and how some of the new models are kind of hinging on those discussions. Having participated in those discussions, Jase, what do you take to be the attitudes and engagement interest of investors in this broadband process right now?
There's a quiet, play it cool, but behind the scenes, like a feeding frenzy, I'd describe it. There's the belief that, there's a whole group of investors, some amazing folks that have built some unbelievable companies and driven some really great returns over the last decades, in part focusing on, grant-backed broadband investment opportunities. right? And there are now all kinds of new mechanisms to bring capital into the mix, and it's more streamlined than ever to do that. And there's our sense is that there's a view that this program could potentially be the last of to be the end of an era, so to speak, right? So it's a sort of get it while the getting is good, and they know that they are the vital last ingredient, right? We joke, it's like, I don't know if I'm dating myself here, but it's like, you ever watch American Gladiator? You remember, it's like, make it through the whole show. It's like, get through the joust, you do great at that like hamster wheel thingy, and you survive, like you get into the eliminator and it's like Electra, knocks you off the ring or something like that. And but you still go, and then at the end, boom, like laser, takes you out. It's like you get to the very last piece after going through this like hell of applying and doing all that stuff. And then you have to go through a process of actually securing your portion. And some of these states are doing really smart sort of algorithms, so to speak, of, where they want the money to go most. They're going to either increase the match requirement for areas where they want the money to not go, right? And, or decrease the match into areas where they feel like they want the money to go, and that it needs a stronger subsidy, right? So the scale of it, if you visualize it, it's like IJA and broadband, it's RDOFs, CAFs, Rus combined, right? It's an enormous slug of money that, smart broadband providers and applicants can and will leverage, right? So there's room for both folks that are on the equity side of the table and folks that are on the credit side of the table, right?
But to just quickly address this question before we get to our call to action or closeout items, Jase. So why should investors be so interested and so engaged? Couldn't their attitude be, hey, the government's going to take care of this, I don't need to be involved, or there's not as much opportunity for me to be involved? Why is that not the attitude they're taking?
Well, investors, it may seem implausible, but investors actually work really friggin' hard, right? And they're always on the lookout for interesting opportunities. And, in most cases, their job is something like, protect the money and grow the money, right? And historically, it's been possible in really good deals to protect the money and to grow the money faster than would be possible without the presence of grants in broadband investments, both in infrastructure and service level. Okay. But we think that investors in our network are most excited about the fact that in Broadband.Money they get data-driven potential results, right? They get access to deal flow. They get to sit down and actually screen applicants in a systematic way. They get all the answers to all their questions, and then they get the assurance that ongoing, like once the money is deployed, they get to follow along with the source of truth of understanding of, okay, well, this is how the money's doing, and here's what the return looks like and everything. And that's really important to a lot of investors. So, that I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And I think it kind of gets us to right where we want to be. We got about a minute. There are two left. Jase, what are some kind of closing thoughts that you have for people who have been participants in this special Broadband Breakfast Live Online and want to know more? What would you ask of them?
No, I just want to say thanks for sharing your time. Like I said, I know you're busy. COVID, changed all the things. We're living in the remote era, and all of you, I think in some way are helping more people connect to better services. And, that means that you're amazing. And in our book, Get Ready, and, Broadband.Money is something that, in many of your cases, it could absolutely help. So, whether you're an applicant and you're looking to apply for somewhere in your territory, you're a consultant that helps, folks, whether your community network, right? There's going to be strong, presence of community networks in the funding. Whether you're a rural electric cooperative, right, and you're looking to launch an ISP or grow your internet business, right, or you're an investor that's looking for the opportunities to get into broadband, investments that are grant backed and into that space. Like, strong encourage everybody to go to Broadband.Money and pre-enroll, and then that kicks off the conversation. So.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us this hour, Jase. A reminder to all those who are watching that next week on Broadband Breakfast Live Online, we're going to be addressing when greenfield fiber meets brownfield multiple dwelling units. So should be an interesting and perhaps even a little controversial topic. So we hope you'll be back next Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern time. On behalf of Jase Wilson of Broadband.Money, I'm Drew Clark at Broadband Breakfast, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.